Were you able to study?
Ma'am, actually, I have downloaded the online material and very superficially just read out, but not in detail.
Okay. So you were not able to go through it properly. Is that so?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, I'm currently doing PhD from School of Education DAV in Indore, and
Acha.
this is I'm just going working on my thesis work only, just
Okay.
left out.
Okay.
So that's why.
Okay, fine. No issues. Whatever we are trying to do is, I'm just trying to give you an overview of what is there in the study material. All right.
Okay, ma'am.
So
Ji.
that, once you go through it, you would probably be able to recall what you have studied, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
just, listen to it. And if you have any problems, as I said, then you can always get in touch, right? Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Good
Ji.
evening, Gauri.
Yes, good evening, ma'am.
So, shall we start? I think we should start, right? And let people join when they are able to.
Sure,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, sure. Now we are into the third block. Okay, and in the third block, I mean, at the third book of this MGS-001, and basically it deals with strategies in GAD, okay, which is gender and development. Now, you're already aware because in the last two classes we have been discussing that initially more and more emphasis was given to WID, then it became, women and development, and then finally it went on to become gender and development. Okay, now the reason why we have the gender and development is because we find that it is true that it is important to have women, specific programs. It is important to have programs or policies which focus on women. It is also important, or rather more important, to focus on gender as such. Okay, because yesterday also I was telling you that if we want to have, we want to bring up the women in the mainstream, if we want to have programs for women, and make them, or empower women, it will not be possible to do it in isolation, right? So we need to uh, include everyone. Okay, so include the men and the women together, so that we can have a the proper development process takes place, and the development of all is possible, right? So initially when it comes to planning, uh, as I told you that when gender was not taken as a very important part, it was expected that whatever plan is being made, that plan is going to have impact on development. And because development will take place automatically, each and every person from any background, from any place, they are going to get benefit out of it. Okay, but later on it was decided that, in when we make our plan, like we make our 5-year plan, we always divide the entire economy into sectors, isn't it? So we have plans specifically for agriculture, we have plans for the industrial sector or the manufacturing sector, the tertiary sector, that is, the service sector. So we have allocations for them. We have allocations for education, separately. So when we are dividing the economy into sectors, we are dividing the service sector into medical, education, transport, and all that, then in that case we also need to divide the economy further as far as the human beings are concerned. Okay, so expecting that a plan will benefit everybody equally, it is not true. So what we need to do is, we need to divide the society into smaller units and segments, and then figure out as to which are the segments of the society which are not able to benefit from the plan. Okay, so that is the reason, time when it was also realized that gender, need to be taken as an important section, of the social development as well as the economic development. And even in gender, we need to, kind of further divide, because as I said, even in women are not a homogeneous group. When we say women, women means there are women from different sections, there are women from different cities, there are different from different rural background, and also different ethnic background. So it is also important to understand the heterogeneity of this huge section called gender, and also women. So therefore it became important that we include gender as an important part of program. And it was also noticed that whenever we have specific programs for development of women, be it employment program, be it educational program, unfortunately, even in gender, some people get the benefit and others don't. All right. So, and that is where I'm saying that, because, and that happens because of the heterogeneity of the group. And therefore, it is important to make sure that we include them. We always say that development takes place when per capita income increases, right? We talk about the the GDP going up, and we claim that India has got a higher growth rate, economic growth rate, from what it had in the last 5-year plan or even the last financial year. But does this mean that a proper qualitative development is also taking place everywhere? Probably not. And that is the reason why it becomes important to identify those weak areas, okay, where a special planning needs to be done. Okay, because we all know that our country is a country of where patriarchy is very very strong. Okay, and because of that, the male member of the family becomes the one who would take the decision, and therefore he becomes the bread earner. He also becomes the person who will generate income, and whatever is the family income goes in his name. So because of that, in many families, the women becomes a subordinate. Okay, and because of their subordinate position, women are usually neglected. Many of the times it is the male member in the family who takes the decision for the women. What the girl would be doing, when she should get married, what the wife is supposed to do, whether she should work or not. No, because of these reasons, and it is not just in India. Okay, it is in many other countries, especially in the third world countries, the African nations. A lot of places where these kind the patriarchy is very very popular, and that is the reason why the subordination of women takes place, right? So the planning needs to consider all these things. Okay, so it is not just about making women financially secure. Yes, it is important, no doubt, but at the same time, it is also important that uh, they are empowered in such a way that they know their rights. They can fight for their rights, because that is what they need to do. Because of the gender inequality that happens in any country, there are a few things that that becomes very obvious, right? First is that there is a clear gender discrimination in terms of, in all the areas. In home there will be a gender discrimination, in education line there will be a gender discrimination, right? As I told you that a lot of children take admission in the primary school, but by the time they go into the middle, there is a huge dropout, and in that dropout, mostly the girl child would sit back, because the girl child will have to then take care of home, take care of their younger brother, right? So that these are things which are very common in especially in the very lower income group in villages, because again the same attitude comes as to why should the girl need any education? She will anyway get married and take care of home. So when that kind of a mentality works, so obviously it is the girl who becomes the dropout. So there is also a discrimination. Choosing the line, nowadays, of course, in the last few decades, there have been a major transition, which is a very good transition. But still, our country is a huge one, and there are many areas in our country where we are still sticking to the traditional thinking that the women are not supposed to go into this kind of a line. Technical line में नहीं जाना है, केयर लाइन में चले जाओ, तो दैट काइंड ऑफ वहां पे ज्यादा आप काम अच्छा कर पाओगे. So that kind of a mental discrimination is created, right? it This kind of gender disparity, or the gender inequality, also leads to violence, okay, right from the beginning. And it starts from home also. Even in home, we have heard about domestic violence, and the domestic violence is something which also leads to, in future, even the social violence that takes place, okay. So that kind of it is the gender inequality that results in the violence, the increasing violence. And there is a negligence as far as ownership of property is concerned, ownership of any entitlement, land, house, anything, right? So usually the male child would get it, but the women will not have a right on it. The women do not get enough decision making power, right? So as I said, because of the patriarchy, the male member will take the decision, the women will just accept it. So whenever there is a decision in the family, the women will just sit back and let the men do it. So they are not allowed to take decision. So these are some of the things where it is important to understand as to why it is gender should become a part of uh, the development process, okay. Then there are always certain assumptions when we go for a planning process. We assume that uh, if the women is educated, then it will solve all the problem. It will solve some problem, but not necessarily all the problem. All right. Just because a woman is educated does not automatically give the women the right to speak up, okay. In many of the families, we have seen even the educated women has been assigned a subordinate role to play. All right. So that is something where an overall change needs to be done. All right. It is also important to understand that, and it is assumed that if a woman is economically independent and she's doing her job and she's getting a salary and she's working, so her dependence on the male member is going to be less, and therefore automatically she will be empowered. Again, this is a situation which may or may not happen. Again, the same point comes: economic independence is very important, no doubt, but at the same time, economic independence also does not always mean that the women has the right to use her own salary, okay. There are times when the women earns money, but the money is finally given to the male member of of the household, right? So that means she doesn't have the right on her own earnings, on do not have the control over her own earnings, okay. So if that is the situation, then we need to look at it in a different way. It is assumed that because men are the considered as the breadwinner of the earner of the family, women's earning is just a subsidiary one. So this is something which is and let me tell you, this doesn't happen in the rural areas or in the poor families. It happens even in I have seen this happening in among people who are reasonably qualified and educated women. And when I ask them as to why they are not very much interested, that they are probably getting lesser salary for the same work. than their male counterpart. I'm talking about private and informal organization. And very happily a few of them told me that and that's okay, our husband is earning enough, and that money is being used for the household expenses and all. Mine is just additional income to the family. It doesn't matter, whatever I am earning is fine. Now, in spite of the fact that the ladies are educated, qualified, they are working in educational institutes, right? And from there, if that is their mental understanding, then in that case, you can understand as to how much empowerment is required even for them. All right. So as they say, empowerment is not something which can be put, which can be fed in you. It has to come from within the women. Okay, they should know their rights and they should be empowered. All right, we can only give them a platform. We can give them some conducive environment to get empowered. We can help them to get empowered, but empowerment will have to come from within. Okay, so that's the reason why I gave you that small example, because this is something which I have actually seen, and I have understood from some of the women's talk. So that is what is there. And there are certain assumptions that women have the right on the land because the constitution gives the right that they have an equal property right. But sometimes it is not implemented. Not every woman gets the right to the family property, right? So yeah, it is also considered that education will reduce the violence. Person who becomes educated will not go into violence. But again, that is not always very true. Okay. Okay, Shrija, somebody is waiting, right? But then I don't know if I can allow. Okay, okay, she's here. All right, fine. Okay, yeah, Nalini is here. All right, okay, fine. So these are the things which need to be understood when we are. Yeah, that's okay, Nalini. No issues at all. It's good that you joined. So these are the assumptions which are taken when we just say that okay, we can just go in for planning, right? So a lot of things needs to be understood. Now, what are the prerequisite of gender planning? All right, so these are as I said, that when you go for planning, when we take certain things as assumption, that is not going to help, right? So we need to understand what are the prerequisite of the gender planning, right? The first prerequisite is that in all the decision making bodies, it is important that the women's participation needs to increase, right? Because women are the best people who would be able to voice their challenges. Okay, and that is the reason why it is important that they should be included in the decision making bodies and committees. Okay, we also need to equip women to raise their need. Not just their participation is important, participation should be active, and active participation can happen only when they will be able to speak up. Okay, they will be able to bring out their issues. Okay, it is also important to sensitize the planning the planning people, the people who are going in for planning. Also the women self help group. Okay, the mahila mandals. Okay, they are groups which help women to empower women. They needs to be trained and sensitized. All the public and the private organization, they should admit more women. Okay. Unfortunately, what happens is that when more women enter an organization, but if they are at the lower position, then they are not able to influence the decisions. All right. So just saying that women, more number of women should enter the organization as employees, that is not going to be enough. It depends on what position the women are. If the women are on a higher position, then only they will be able to influence the decision. So that is something which also needs to be taken care of. All right. Then women leaders of the municipality and panchayats also should be provided with proper training, right? We In our country, the panchayats are doing a, an amazing work in many areas. But and there are a lot of women areas where a women is the head, okay, the punch, okay, and he she is the one who is taking care, and they're doing good work. So therefore a lot of more training needs to be given to them. Then women, the concept of gender training, it should include, okay, it should include power relations, right? Power relations are, of course, the relationship between the men and the women, right? So it is important that the power relation needs to be handled properly, because there are times when the women becomes the head of an institution, or the head of any organization. Sometimes it becomes a little difficult for the men working in the same organization to accept the women as a leader. Okay, again, because of the patriarchy mindset, right? It is sometimes very difficult to have a senior person as a woman, and then the men working in a subordinate position. The reverse is not a problem, but if it works this way, then it might be a problem. So how you should sensitize, how that organization and the people working in the organization should be sensitized, irrespective of gender, to accept the fact that there can be women who are on higher positions and can take decisions, and one need to accept those decisions and work accordingly, right? So that these are areas which needs to be taken care of when you go for your gender, when gender planning is right. So I think the program person will have to allow them in. I don't think I can do it. Hmm. No, I can't. Okay. Right. Fine. So, these are the prerequisite that are required uh, for the planning, right? Gender planning at grassroots level is also extremely important, not just at the top level or at the higher level, but at the grassroots level. Grassroots level, of course, panchayat is at the grassroots level, right? So how they are working and in what way they are working is also very essential. So what should be the steps, what are the various steps that should be taken when for the gender planning process? First is sensitizing official and elected representatives. Okay, as I told you, it is important to mobilize the people, for gender plan. It is important to discuss, with people as to how gender planning should be done. Of course, participation of the panchayat, participations of the local bodies are also important, and sensitizing them is also sensitizing the people who are going for the planning, especially the officials, also needs to be done. Then for gender planning, we need to have government orders, right? We all know that in most of the countries, the planning is basically done by the government. All right, it can be the central government, it can be the state government, it can be the local government bodies, but a government aspect is also there. So the gender component must be incorporated in the planning, and that has to be put forward to the government officials. Okay, the government should have and should also give guidelines. If a state government is going to plan, the central government needs to give guidelines as to what are the areas which need to be focused. All right, then funds need to be raised and need to be allocated, right? So the fund transfer either from the central government to the state government or from the state government to the panchayat, these things need to be very carefully done and proper allocation needs to be there. Identification of practical gender needs and strategic gender needs are also very very important. As we were discussing even about a day back, that women's needs are different. Okay, women's priorities are different, and accordingly they have to be identified. That there are two type of needs: practical gender needs and strategic gender needs. Practical gender needs are with day to day livelihood problems, and practical and they are also very short term, so they can be immediately taken care of, and they should be immediately taken care of. Strategic gender needs are for a higher higher level, in the sense that it is about the power relationship, it is about the women rights. Okay, it is about equal pay, equal rights. Okay, so when that kind of gender needs which are strategic will not happen very quickly, it will take time. So it is usually a long term needs. Okay, and the long term needs obviously need longer time period also to manage. So these are the things that needs to be taken care of, right, as to how they are going to uh, work on it. Okay, when you go through your booklet, you will find that they have specifically mentioned what are the practical needs, what are the strategic needs, how they need to be taken care of. Okay, and this is a very very important part of gender planning. Okay, so when you study, kindly concentrate more on strategic gender needs. Okay, it is usually a very very important concept. All right, then we come down to the example of uh, our women's strategic need in India is changes in the Hindu Marriage Act. Okay, the Hindu Marriage Act, the legal provisions that were given by the government. Okay, all these things come under the strategic general need. That's what I'm trying to say is practical needs are the day-to-day needs, so it can be handled quickly. But when you are going to transform something, obviously, then there will be some you need more time. Okay, so these are the ways through which you have to understand. Then we come to the policy formulation. Now you need to make a draft of the policy, isn't it? Once you have decided all this, the needs and everything has been decided, then you come to taking care of the policy formulation, for which again it is very important to have proper discussion. Right, you must also consult experts, right? Experts who are going to give a proper advice to the policy makers. All right, there can be as I said, that when the needs have been identified, how to solve them, not everybody can do it. You need to employ experts, you need to talk to the expert, and then the draft is made. Okay, then a proper development strategy needs to be done on the information that people have collected, and then based on the development strategy, an action plan needs to be formulated. All right, so the action plan should be divided properly. Sector wise division is best. The problems of agricultural sector, the gender issues in education, the gender issues in health, they need to be separately taken care of. Needs should always be prioritized. It is important to give priority to the immediate needs that needs to that must be done. Plan should always be divided into short term and long term plan, because we, as I said, needs are also short term and long term, and accordingly you have to give the plan. Then the plan needs to be converted into project, right? Unless and until you make smaller projects, you will not be able to implement the plan. The implementation of plan takes place as when it comes when it is properly done into projects. Then resources needs to be mobilized, isn't it? We all know that the planning cannot be implemented and become successful unless and until you have enough resources. Okay, so the resources should be mobilized. Now, whether it comes from the central government, whether it will come from the state government, it all depends on where the resources are available. So that needs to be identified, right? Then resources should be enough to meet the needs, right? So if the need is requiring a certain amount of money and a certain amount of other resources, it could be human resource, it could be capital resource, so all these resources needs to be in sync with the requirement. Okay, if it is not, then your planning will not be successful, right? Yeah, then after the resource mobilization, as I said earlier also, practical needs can be immediately solved, so because they are all short term, and based on the fund transfer and the local government capacity of mobilization of the fund, how the project is done, and annual basis implementation needs to be fixed. Okay, that from this year to this year, this much will be achieved, then this much will be achieved. Target based agar nahi hoga, then we will not be able to achieve anything successfully, right? So these are the things that need to be done. We must select the beneficiaries, who are the people who are going to benefit. Now we also, one needs to also do a cost benefit analysis. Okay, like for example, let us take the example that in a village. Okay, in order to connect the village to the nearby city, the bus service needs to be given. All right, now giving a bus service, because we come across a situation where the women in the village, they are making certain products, and they are not able to sell it in the village. But if it was found that there is a good demand of those products in the nearby town. Now, in order to help the women to sell their product in the town, we need to provide them with transportation. Otherwise, the women will not be able to go. So, in order to do that, we have to identify a lot of things. First of all, we have to see the distance, whether the bus is can be made available. If the bus is made available, which is the best time? If we give a bus in the morning, then the women may not be able to use it, because at that time they are actually busy doing their household work. Okay, so for them, taking that bus at morning say 10:30 will not be probably conducive. So if you do not think about all this, and if the government just provides a bus, then it is actually a waste of money, because the cost of the bus, okay, the charges that of running the bus, the diesel price, the salary that will be given to the driver, the wear and tear of the bus that will take place. So all these things becomes the cost. And what would be the benefit? The women are anyway not able to take it, so that means the bus will just travel between the two places without probably having enough customers. Okay, so that means the cost benefit analysis will show a negative aspect, right? So maybe it would be a good idea to figure out that, okay, maybe at 3 o'clock the women are free from the work, household work. Children are now taking their afternoon nap. So this is the time when the women are able to collect all their products, and they can shift move to the city, because they have enough number of hours, let's say 2 3 hours till the evening, after which again they will probably be busy with their household work, okay, preparing dinner and all. So it is probably a good idea to have the bus around that time. Okay, so the cost benefit analysis and all that needs to be properly analyzed. Okay, technical review of the project is to be done, and of course gender auditing also needs to be taken care of. All right, so these are the few things that you have to keep in mind while one needs to prepare a plan. Okay, uh, it is also important to understand what is the state policy towards the women's needs. Okay, how can the state intervene in the women's life? Okay, when it comes to we all know that there are two spheres of anybody's life. Okay, one is the private sphere and the other one is the public sphere. Okay, public sphere is when we go out of our home, right? We are working in a place, that is a public sphere, right? We are interacting with people outside our family. We are going to the school, we are going to college, right? As I said, we are going for a job, we are entering a business, we are working in a field, wherever. So all these areas are public sphere. Now when it comes to the public sphere, the government is able to do it properly. Okay, like for example, as I said, the government can provide you with transportation to reach your destination. The government can provide money in terms of credit or anything, can help the women to start their own business. Okay, education, medical, all these areas can be intervened by the government policies. But what will happen when it comes to the private sphere, right? Is it possible for the government to intervene in the private sphere of people, right? Then there is a question in what way they can intervene. So obviously it is important that there are legislation which can be made by the government, which has an impact on the personal space of the women, okay, or the private sphere of the women, right? For example, the reproductive rights for the women. Okay, reproduction is a personal matter, isn't it? So what are the reproductive rights, or what should be those reproductive rights given to the women? After all, reproduction is done by the women, right? She's the one who will carry the child, right? So she should have the right to decide, like, when she would want to want to become pregnant, right? How many children she wants to have, right? It should not be only the decision of the family and the patriarchal head. It cannot, because, and it should not, because it is the women's body that is going to be in stake, right? So she should be the one who should decide, right? The violence against women, especially the domestic violence, marital rape, okay, these are the areas in which the women can be given special rights by the government in terms of the legislation. Okay, so that is how it should be done. Okay, we have two kinds of natalist policy. Okay, children, having number of children. One is anti-natalist policy, okay, which is usually in China, where they have kept it as the one child norm in order to control the population. Whereas in Europe, especially in the northern Europe, the Scandinavian countries, there they have the pro natalist policy, because there the growth rate of population has actually, in many countries, it has become negative. Okay, people are not having children, right? They have a very high standard of living, and there the population, people are worried. Okay, and that what is happening, and we are the population will the growth rate of population will become negative. In many places it has become negative anyway. So these are the things where one needs to, so whichever is the policy, pro-natalist or anti-natalist, depending on the condition of the country, but the women and the gender should be included in it. Okay, it's a very important part. Like for example, another way the government can help intervene in the, I won't call it interference, I would call it intervention. So, intervene in the women's personal space, or rather in the women's private sphere, is the legal status of women's marriage. Okay, so that also is very important. I know in a country like India we have to also take the religious aspect in mind, but at the same time, the policies, keeping the religious concept into it, it is important that there are certain rights and legal rights to be given to the women. Okay, when it comes to the marriage is concerned, right? We know that in the last few decades, almost a decade or a little more than that, there have been a lot of divorce cases, in India. It is on the rise. I'm not going to go into the fact that whether it is a good thing or a bad thing, because that's a very, very personal matter, right? But when it comes to the divorce and all, what are the rights that the women should have? Okay, right? I mean, of course, there are rights that the man should also have, and it is there, right? So it is a common thing, it's the entire gender which is impacted because of a breaking of the relationship. So how it can be properly, formally, legally done, right? So that has to be taken into uh, care, right? So these are the things that are happening. Now, coming to the next unit, it is basically about certain international conventions. We have already studied the international conventions that has happened because of the UN declaration of the decade of women. There have been four conventions, right? So in those, there had been a discussion on something like affirmative action, inclusive policy, and substantive equality, right? So what are the affirmative actions? So affirmative action is not exactly uh, it is not a right basically, but it is available to everyone. Okay, so it is an action which is available to everyone. It is a special need only for people who have been the who have been victim of inequality. Okay, so if there is anybody who is somewhere or the other do not have equal status in the society, right? And So how they are able to uh, you know uh, they can be protected with the help of affirmative action. Okay, so like for example, the state makes law. Okay, the state makes a law in favor of women. Okay, uh, so it allows the state government, it allows the local bodies to take decision in favor of women and child. Okay, in India, like for example, there are several organizations working for the women rights and for the children especially. Okay, because they are the vulnerable group, right? So because they are working for them, the government and the constitution gives them the right for their affirmative action. And they where they can work to to uh, to change the discrimination. Okay, or to reduce the discrimination rather. Okay, and also to make certain kind of compensations. Okay, for the discriminative environment. Okay, so these can be done. the promotion of NGOs. Okay, the government somewhere or the other uh, allows the NGOs to work the way they want to work. Okay, so they are a non-government organization, but somewhere or the other, from the government's point of view, the NGOs are working very well. There are a lot of NGOs who are working in the country in order to provide rights to the children, rights to the women. Okay, so they are allowed to they are given that environment to work. All right, so that is an affirmative action by the government. All right. uh, when it comes to the inclusive policy is the gender mainstreaming was first came into action, or rather it was announced, it was propounded in the during the fourth conference of women. Okay, in Beijing. Okay, 1995. That was the first time when the concept of gender mainstreaming was came into action. Right, people started talking about it. Now, what is gender mainstreaming? As I told you, it is a process through which we try and understand as to how the gender, and here we are talking about both men and women, you know what are the implications of a policy. Okay, what are the implications of a program uh, which is being which the government wants to make, okay, or any other body wants to make, right? How is it going to have an impact on both men and women? So there are strategies, there are methods through which the gender mainstreaming strategy can be applied, okay, to understand the implication of the policy and the program, and in the way it affects the men and the women uh, who are going to be affected by that particular policy. Okay, so there is a way through which it can be taken care of, it can be measured, it can be it can be analyzed, and it can be judged. Okay, so that we can understand whether the policy or the program is going to have a positive impact or not. Okay, and so gender means, and it helps, and that is how the gender mainstreaming becomes an inclusive policy, because it is including both men and women. Okay, the impact on men and women, and it tries to uh, include both the gender in order to formulate a policy. Okay, so that is the reason why it is known as the inclusive policy. Okay, so what are the basic components, of gender mainstreaming? Right, so for formulating policy strategy, okay, for ensuring that gender issues are brought into consideration. Right, so the first thing is gender issues should be brought under consideration for the gender mainstreaming. Then proper use of gender analysis. Okay, analysis by taking disaggregated data. Right, I told you, I think this is a word we used a day back also, that data or that is collected, okay, it needs to be disaggregated. Okay, disaggregated on the basis of sex and age. Right, because when we take a common data, we are not able to identify whether the men or the women, whoever is able to get the benefit. So we need to disaggregate the data. Right, so that is important. A sector specific gender survey needs to be done. Okay, and gender sensitive study also needs to be conducted. All right, and of course medium term plan and program budgets also needs to be identified from the gender perspective. Right, as to how much money is being spent in which area. Right, so that needs to be done. It is a basic human rights strategy through which gender mainstreaming can be achieved, and we can have a better you know a better planning system in the country. All right, so that has to be taken care of. Then, of course, substantive equality. Okay, so the government of India basically talks about further actions and initiatives, okay, to implement the Beijing Declaration platform of action. Okay, what kind of action should be taken, right? What measures should be taken by the government of India? The government of India has taken, several heads on which they have taken the various decisions, like the policy making, decision making, in which gender perspective has included, mainstreaming the gender perspective. Also, the government of India has done that. Social empowerment, economic empowerment of women, then violence against women. There are later on you will come to know there are several several legal legislations that have been passed because of that. Rights of the girl child, right? Even today, we, as I said, we are having several programs related to that. Okay, how mass media can help. Okay, and the way the mass media should promote gender equality, that is there. Operational strategies, institutional mechanism, legislation, just now as I told you. Gender sensitization, it is also, it's a very important part is gender sensitization. you know our legal system, our the law enforcement authorities, how they treat women and how they should treat women, there is a major difference. So sensitization should take place at all level. The government official needs to be sensitized. Okay, the police and the police official needs to be constantly, sensitization program needs to be there. All right, men and women both needs to be sensitized. Okay, uh, the parents needs to be sensitized actually. How they bring up their children go a long way, to bring about a gender equality. Okay, because in many of the families, if there is a male child and if there is a female child, they are treated very differently sometimes. you know and I'm not talking about कि लड़कियों को रात को देर से आना है नहीं आना है, वो that is a different matter altogether. But at the same time, how you treat your children, okay, it is also very essential. Like for example, in many households, if there is a guest who would come immediately, I don't know if some of you have experienced it or not, but I have seen happening in many of the families where immediately the girl will be asked to go and bring, pani lekar aao, and ye chalo ye serve kar do. The girl will be constantly doing it with the mother. Okay, the boy might be actually playing with the boy who has come, maybe the boy child who had come with the family or the guest, right? In many families, it is like taken for granted that the girl is going to do all this and the male child will play, right? It is a very small matter, right? One might say कि अरे इससे क्या होता है, but it is the way you groom up. All right, that it is the work of the girl is to take care of the guest and give food and serve water and all that kind of thing. The male child can go and play, and there is not a they are not supposed to do all this, right? So when that kind of a you know that is the way things become in the family. Later on also, that is how the adult male and the adult female is also groomed accordingly. So basically this is the socialization process of a girl child and a boy child, okay, or a male child. So it is important that the parents are also sensitized that there should be an equality. So everything should be equally done, and they should be groomed in such a way so that later on also they become the people who are sensitive towards gender. And the gender role should not be defined like this. Okay, So that kind of thing. Then of course the Panchayati Raj, they're doing a good work and they need to be properly trained further, and partnership with the voluntary organization. So the government is also, partnering with a lot of non-government and voluntary organization, through which yeah, proper action and equality is being taken care of, and of course international cooperation. Okay, now obviously, which are the areas in which we need to focus more is, of course, the social and the legal empowerment of women. And how it is done, it is done through education, right? It is done through the holistic approach towards the health, nutrition. Okay, we have a very high mortality rate in, in women. Okay, because somewhere or the other the nutrition uh, goes missing. Okay, there are always a talk that it is the women who would eat last in home. Okay, after feeding everybody, whatever remains the women will have, right? And that's not very uncommon. It happens in a lot of families. Okay, and that is the reason sometimes the women is not able to have enough. Forget about having nutrition, even they may not be able to have enough food. Okay, so that area needs to be taken care of, because if the women is weak, then because of the work, because of the reproductive activity that she has to take on, women would face a problem. And you must have heard somewhere that osteoporosis is something which is a very very common disease among women. Okay, lack of calcium, the bones become brittle, because right from the beginning, somewhere or the other, the proper nutrition is not there, and once they bear child, okay, their body undergoes a lot of change. All right, so that needs to be taken care of. Drinking water and sanitation is very important for everybody, but also for the women, obviously. Housing and shelter, right? Women are constantly thinking about that. The environment, how is the environment, how the environment is affected, women are very closely connected with them. It is important that we strengthen the fact that science and technology also plays a very important role in women's life. Legal empowerment is required. Okay, and of course economic empowerment, definitely. They should become economically more no more empowered. Okay, various programs have been there, where, for self employment, for employment generation, for income generation. So that is there. And of course political empowerment. We know that one third reservation for women in panchayat has already come through, and now it is, there's a talk about 50% of uh, you know reservation being done for the women. uh, a lot of constitutional rights are being given. All right, so that is taking care of it, right? So these are the areas that needs to be there, and also a uh, policies, and a lot of work has to be done for social protection and social security. Okay, so we already know that there is a convention that has been ratified by a lot of countries including India, and that is known as CEDAW. Okay, so CEDAW is like CEDAW. Okay, so Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Right, so we have also ratified it, and in all our in our legal actions, CEDAW does play a very very important role. But there have been a lot of other things that has happened also, like the Vishaka judgment. Okay, Vishaka versus state of Rajasthan. Okay, there have been other cases also where women have come up, and come forward to uh, to fight for their rights. Okay, so these kind of social security is also very very important. And of course, the various programs, like the Manegra program was there, community radio is there where women can talk about their problems. Okay. There's a concept of food stamps where the lower income group, the people below poverty line, they get stamps. Okay, they can get stamps from the government sector, where they can go and buy food items from any of the grocery shop, and they can use that stamp, and that money will be, by the state government, it will be given to the retailer. Okay, so that is there has been a special cell, the National Commission for Women. They have made a special cell for women who have been married to NRIs and later they were dumped. Okay, so people from other countries come, they marry, according to their family's choice. They marry a woman, and then they go back, leaving their wife here. And later on, it was, in many cases, it was found that the man has already got a wife there in whichever country they are living. Okay, now these women who have been married, but now their status is like, doubtful. So the National Commission for Women has actually created an NRI cell to figure out, these kind of cases and how to solve them. And of course, women property right. So it has been decided, and it was made compulsory that uh, the women would be getting a home which will be in their name. Okay, right. Recently also, I mean, like in the last few years, the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, where it has been decided that the low cost house that will be given, it will not be in the name of the male member of the family, but it will be in the name of the female member. Okay, so that gives them a property right. Okay, so that also helps. Now if you have a house of your own, you can even, get a good loan from the banks, to start your own business. Women के साथ सबसे बड़ा problem यही होता है that they do not have the right on property. And in many of the cases, so they do not have anything to mortgage. Okay, and then it becomes difficult for them to get a proper loan from the but then if you have a property in your name, then it becomes easier. Okay, so the women, those who are coming from very, low income group or very poor family, for them it is a very important thing that they have a house which is in their name. Okay, so all these things are there. Yes, no doubt there are certain drawbacks also, but then I guess whatever it is, one needs to, along with the drawback, there are things which keep changing, no doubt about it. But it is there. Okay, the last unit, I guess, is about engendering the governance. Okay, now what is the concept of engendering? Okay, we all know that the governance is the exercise of political, economic, and administrative authority to manage the national affair, isn't it? Now, it is a very complex mechanism, right? There's a lot of process that takes place, relationship, institutions who are working with the government, right? Now, how you engender them, all right? So, of course, training is important, all right? So, and also making sure that a certain number of women candidates are also there, so there should be a balance in the gender. Okay, I'm not saying that women candidates should over populate the place, and the number of women should be more than the number of women. No, it's not the men. No, it is the balance. Okay, so a proper balance needs to be there. Okay, so it is important that the gender gap that exists in the various government organization, in the various policy making bodies, it is important that more and more women gets the uh, uh, you know are able to work in these areas. Okay, and therefore uh, the entire governance will become more gendered. Okay, so gendering it is very, very important, creating a conducive environment for the women to work. Okay, so that the women's need is also properly highlighted. Okay, their voice is heard. Okay, and for that, as I always keep telling you, that it is not always important to have more numbers. It is need, we definitely need a certain number of women representatives, but they should be competent women representative as well, and therefore training is important for them. All right, not only their education but also their training to voice their rights, to voice their opinion, and to make a change in the policy making system. Right, so they should be uh, they should be doing that. Okay, so there are many instruments. Okay, self help group, later on in future you will be doing a lot on self help group. It's a very, very important concept. And self help group is it helps uh, empowering the women, right, empowering the women and making them competent, making them confident to talk about it, and speak about their views. All right, so these are the ways through which it is being done. uh, a lot of grassroots network, women's network are taking place. When you go through it, you will come to know, and if there is anything, you must be able to tell me. So with that, the strategies in GAD is more or less over. The next one, as I told you, that after today's class we have only two and classes left for this particular subject, and therefore I'll be taking up the fourth. I'll give you an overview of the fourth book also. And the fourth book is basically gender mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming is a very, very important strategy. And therefore, there's an entire booklet which has been, assigned to gender mainstreaming in policy making, right? So there are about 4 units. Let us see how many we can cover. Now, gender mainstreaming, I have already told you what is the meaning of it. You will go through it and you will find that there are certain definitions. Okay, but broadly, every definition tells you that gender mainstreaming is basically an integration, of the gender's perspective in every stage of the policy process. Okay, right? It talks about its design, implementation, monitoring, evaluation in all these areas, how the gender perspective is integrated in it. Okay, and in it is done in order to promote an equality between the men and women. Okay, it also assesses as to how these policies have an impact on both the genders. Okay, both the men and the women. Right, so as I said, this is a strategy, right, and this is a strategy with the help of which we try to analyze these kind of things. So the strategy basically seeks to ensure that the analysis of issue and the formulation of policy are informed by a consideration of, gender differences and gender inequality. So you have to consider both the gender difference as well as inequalities, and how they can be imbibed and incorporated in the policy making. Okay, and how opportunities are sought to narrow the gender gap and promote gender equality. Obviously, when you know the difference, when you know when you understand the difference between the genders, okay, you will be, and you understand the inequality that exists, you will be able to solve that problem and reduce the gender gap. Okay, so that is why the gender mainstreaming needs to be applied. Okay, so what are the significance, or why is it important? obviously, uh, it helps you to, rethink, and restructure the already existing policies, okay, to figure out, because the inequalities, and therefore you can bring a change in that, so you can rethink on it, right? The inequalities that exist between men and women, okay, those issues can be handled. Always remember, gender mainstreaming is a strategy which will challenge the power relationship, okay? The power, because the moment you try and reduce the general inequality that exists in any organization, in any policy making body, uh, whether it is a private organization, whether it is a government organization, it is a situation will be created in which the power relationship, when I say power relationship, the power relationship between men and women, financial empowerment and financial, what was the complete question?
I was asking that is there any difference between financial empowerment, monetary empowerment, or economic empowerment? Or can we
uh,
use any of the terms?
yeah, see, the financial empowerment, see, there is a little difference between finance, money, okay, and finance is basically about the financial instruments and the financial help that you might be able to get, okay, right? So microfinance, loans and all that, that relates to the finance, right? Monetary is basically in terms of money generation, right? How much money you have, how you can utilize that, okay. Now when it comes to empowerment, if we talk about financial empowerment, you can talk about the financial help that the women might be able to get, okay. So how well the microfinance institutions are working, okay, in order to provide financial empowerment to the women. If I want to start a business, I need money, right? I need financial help. From where do I get it, right? If I'm a very poor woman, I will not pay, or an illiterate woman, I might be very scared to go to the bank because I won't understand anything, right? The most important problem in bank is that the formalities are so complicated that sometimes even people who know little bit, they also don't understand. I remember that one day I was standing in a bank and I was waiting for withdrawal of money. Suddenly there was this lady who came, and she was standing in a very timid condition in a corner, and she was just looking and she was not able to understand. So I went ahead, I said that, ma'am, what is the problem? I mean, obviously I asked in Hindi, and she said that मुझे पैसे निकालने हैं. I said कि हाँ तो मैडम निकालिए. तो नहीं, मुझे नहीं पता कैसे निकालना है. शी इज लाइक, एंड ऑब्वियसली वो इतना इम्पोजिंग हो जाता है कई बार बैंक में, that she was feeling hesitant to even talk to the bankers, कि भाई मुझे हेल्प कर दो, right? तो then I said okay fine, कैसे निकालना है. then मैंने उनको थोड़ा गाइड किया. then there was this one fellow in the bank, I told him कि सर आप इसकी थोड़ी मदद कर दीजिए, इनको पैसे निकालने हैं. तो then हाँ हाँ आइए, so that is the situation, right? So how the financial help is being given to the women, how they are being empowered financially, okay. Monetary is your money. If you are having an income, okay, if you're able to generate your income by working in some field, by working in a company or wherever, okay, so when you're able to work, you're getting an income, and that gives you a monetary power, okay, a power of money, isn't it? So primarily that is the difference. Now empowerment by getting money will be whether you are able to use the money for your own purpose or not. There are cases where the women is working, getting the money, and finally where does the money go? The money goes into the hands of the husband, who will take the decision about what is happening in the uh, in the in with the money. Now the point is, if the lady wants to use it for some purpose of her own, she might actually have to ask her husband to give the money, in spite of the fact that she is herself earning, isn't it? Right. So basically, I have nothing against giving the money to the husband. Please go ahead, but then you should have your own, you should have the right on it. Okay, because you are also earning, right? So how much empowered are the women when it comes to money part, right? So does that answer your question, Nalini?
Hello.
Yeah.
Ma'am, then economic empowerment, how is it
Yeah,
different?
basically, economic is considering all this only. Okay, it is just a different name that is being given. Financial and monetary empowerment automatically makes you economically empowered. Okay, right? So that is how it is. All right, fine.
Thank you,
Okay.
ma'am.
Yeah, welcome, welcome. Right now, the next thing that we will be doing, yeah. So I was telling you about the significance of gender mainstreaming. All right. So okay, just give me a minute. I'll just switch on the light. Uh, Sorry, I'm back. It is actually getting a little late in the evening, and right. So yeah, so these are the things, and when the power relationship is challenged, okay, then there can be a lot of issues, right? I told you that because of the patriarchal society, it becomes a little difficult sometimes for the male members to suddenly see uh, more women entering the same field. Okay, more women reaching the higher positions or the decision making positions, and therefore it might need a special kind of intervention. Okay, so here gender mainstreaming will affect both men and women, and that is the reason why a proper sensitization and training needs to be done. Okay, so we have to understand that when we take up gender mainstreaming strategy and we incorporate uh, more women in the higher positions or in policy making positions, and give them that right, uh, we are going to challenge the power relationship, and therefore a special mention of it needs to be done. Okay, and one needs to take care of it, right? Because we have to understand that men and women both need to work together towards equality. I keep telling you, earlier also I said that women empowerment and gender equality cannot be done in isolation, right? Only having special programs for women, it is important to have special programs and allocations for women, but that alone will not reduce the equality. Okay, the inequality. Okay, for making it an equal environment, the whole environment needs to change, right? And that is the reason why gender mainstreaming strategy is used. Okay, so the major benefits of gender mainstreaming is that gender planning, if you with the help of gender mainstreaming, if you make an a proper gender plan, then it makes very good economic sense. Now why does it make an economic sense? Because we all know that both men and women are the are a part of the labor force, isn't it? So they are our human resource. right? So instead of using 50% of the human resource, that is only the male members, you are including the 50% of the women human resource, and therefore by having an equality between the two, you are actually using 100% labor force, right? So economically it is very good for the country, right? It also, there are various studies which are shown that discrimination based on the gender, it increases poverty and it slows down the economic growth. Okay, because if a certain percentage of the population which are poor, I told you that the total, out of the total poor people, more percentage of women are in the poverty line. Okay, so if the poverty increases, obviously their contribution to the economic growth will also decrease, right? So increase in poverty will decrease the contribution towards the economic growth. So therefore, uh, a balance in the gender is also very, very important. And also we must understand that by promoting gender equality, it also means promoting fundamental human right. Having an equal status is the fundamental human right of every individual, irrespective of their gender. All right, so that needs to be understood, right? What are the basic principles of uh, of gender mainstreaming, right? So we all know that all issues should be defined in such a manner that the gender difference is identified. So in every field, wherever the planning has to be done, with the help of gender mainstreaming, we must be able to diagnose that gender inequality, where exactly the gender inequality exists. Okay, then gender mainstreaming can also, when we are making it a regular practice, uh, the companies, the planning bodies will become accountable. Okay, they will be responsible in making sure that the gender equality is maintained. Okay, it also requires efforts that are made to increase women's participation, broaden women's participation in all level. Okay, and that is a very good way of creating a balance. Okay, gender mainstreaming must be institutionalized, right? So it should become a part of the institution. Okay, a part of the organization, right? And proper steps must be taken, right? United Nations is always favoring it and doing it also. Gender mainstreaming does not replace the need for targeted women's policy. I told you that gender mainstreaming does not mean that we should not have special programs for the women oriented program. They are a part of it, they will have to be there. Okay, but gender mainstreaming at a higher level, at the policy making level, is also very essential. Okay, and a proper, clear, political will and allocation of adequate resources for gender mainstreaming is very, very important. Okay, so that is where it is very important. Okay, gender mainstreaming should be used, it should be brought in practice. Okay, it in all dimensions, it should be in the technical dimension, in the sense, uh, you know uh, getting more data. Okay, try and find out more data, more research work needs to be done. Okay, a large sample size needs to be taken, right? एक छोटे से sample size के ऊपर you cannot find out the gender differences, right? As I told you, sex disaggregated data. Okay, disaggregated data between the two, अगर आप एजुकेशन की डेटा देख रहे हो, तो आप फाइंड आउट करो कि लिटरेसी रेट में मेल कितने हैं, फीमेल कितने हैं, रूरल एरिया में कितना है, अगेन ऑल सेक्स डिसएग्रीगेटेड डेटा. Okay, that helps. हो भी रहा है. I'm not saying that it's not happening in India. It's happening in many other countries. It's happening, right? and proper understanding is important. Political dimension mein hona chahiye, gender mainstreaming should be practiced in political dimension, where women as decision makers should be promoted. Okay. Collective efforts of women needs to be taken into consideration. Cultural dimension, it is as I told you, that it is important to realize that there is a major cultural impact, okay, on people's life, isn't it, be it women, be it men, right? So it is important that when we are talking about gender mainstreaming, we have to take into consideration about the socio cultural practices that are prevailing in our area. Okay. Because every country will have a different socio cultural pattern, isn't it? So we cannot base ours on the basis of what is happening in US or what is happening in UK. We are two different socio cultural setup. All right. So we have to take that into consideration. All right. So you will go through it and you will see that there's a lot of instruments of gender mainstreaming, okay, where planning and policies are there. There are different heads. We have done a few already, like policy coordination, legislation, gender sensitive plan. These are the several points which you need to talk about. Decentralization of decision making process, we are doing it. Panchayati Raj is a decentralization method, right? Analysis like sex disaggregated data, gender analysis has to be done. Awareness and capacity building, right? I told you again and again that by including women in the decision making position is not going to be enough. Training and capacity building is equally important so that they can contribute positively and actively, right? So training and sensitization is important. Advocacy and general and awareness generation is important. Building gender competence, as that's an essential part. Capacity development in gender analysis has to be done. Access to information at different level, right? All kinds of information should be made available in order to understand how the policy should be made, changed, implemented. Okay. Then monitoring, just making the policy is not going to be enough. Implementation is important, and monitoring of the policy is also very important, whether it is being successfully implemented or not, right? So each and every policy program should be monitored, right? Then countering gender based violence, there is a possibility that there might be certain areas in which gender mainstreaming, because it is going to create a uh, you know uh, an environment of it is going to question the power relationship. There is a possibility that there is some kind of violence, okay, uh, violence against people who are going to take the decision or implementation. Violence because women are getting higher positions, okay. So that is possible. I know it's not something which is impossible, but we need to counter them. Okay. It is important to have a proper base where you can counter the gender based violence, and you have to uh, engender the justice system, right? As I said that gender sensitization for the justice system, the legal system, the the law protecting people, and or law enforcing people, police and all that, programs are being held, right? So they all have to be sensitized, okay, as to why these things are happening and how it has to be sensitively uh, you know mm, tackled. Okay. So that is very important. And gender sensitive enforcement, yeah, justice system, as I said, right? So these are the things which needs to be uh, clarified, right? Then gender mainstreaming in policy, analysis as to how the policy, you know, a gender perspective needs to be made, right, and how it's to be included. So it should be included in the formulation of the policy issue. The moment we want to make a policy, the first question is that whether this policy is going to have the desired impact on men and women, whether it is going to have reduce the general gender inequality, right? So that question needs to be answered, right? We need to define the needs. Why do we need that policy, right? We have to assessment, we have to have the assessment of the implication. If a policy or program is going to be implemented, how is it going to affect the men, how is it going to affect the women, right? That needs to be uh, figured out first, right? Then determination of who will be consulted and how. So we need to find out to whom we should talk before we make that policy, right, or the program, because we need to find out whether it is going to be of some advantage or not. So who are the people with whom you are going to discuss about that particular policy, and then formulation of the recommendations, okay, as to how the recommendation is, whether they are uh, proper recommendation, how they can be handled, what changes need to be done for the policy. Data collection is also very very important. So in whatever way, by interviewing, by questionnaire, by going through the already existing data, you need to find out as to how these data, the entire statistical part needs to be properly uh, taken in, analyzed, and also interpreted. Okay, then only it will be possible for you to understand where the problem is there. Okay, so disaggregated data is extremely important in order to understand the gender perspective. Then at every stage of implementation and monitoring, okay, gender mainstreaming is important. Okay, we need to find out in every point where when it is being implemented, what is the gender aspect in it. When the monitoring is being done, how it is going, it is affecting, whether the desired result are coming or not, right? So all these things you have to uh, you know uh, have to check, right? Negative impacts needs to be also checked out. As I told you, there might be certain unhappiness, there might be uh, certain violence taking place, right? So we have to be ready for that, and we have to accept it, okay, and we have to make sure that these things can be tackled and these can be controlled, right? We must also know that there are constraints on women's participation. Okay, we may actually have to reconsider as to how more women can be integrated. Okay, because they initially, if there are 10 people coming, there is a possibility by the time the project is going to be there, it is going to be 5, because 5 people have given up. 5 women were asked not to come, right? So again, how more and more people can be aggregate. It's a constant process. You cannot just do it once and then forget about it. Okay, and budget is a very very big and important part, right? We all know that budgets are uh, very uh, very important for any program, any policy to be properly implemented. So from where we are going to get the budget, how it is going to be released, right? So all these things are there. When you go through the case study, you will come across the Indian census of 2001, or even the latest one. Uh, how different type of gender sensitization has been done, where gender specific questionnaire was made. Okay, when we were talking about, when census was done, we it focus on women's economic activity was also taken care of. Okay, so in every census now, the government of India is actually trying to include the gender perspective. Okay, uh, how, what kind of place you are living in, and the making and a proper awareness among women. So all these things are being done. So it is India, in India also a lot of work is being is happening. Okay, gender mainstreaming, there was a very good example and case study of the IDB. Okay, IDB is the Inter-American Development Bank. They have done certain good work in the domestic violence field. Okay, especially in South America and all. You will come across the case study. So please go through the case studies, because case studies help you to understand the practical implication of any concept, like for example the gender mainstreaming. Okay, so that is how it is. Then there is a topic on implementing the gender mainstreaming. Okay, as to what are the different methodologies. Okay, so it is a strategy. As I told you, it is a strategy. It talks about giving attention to the equality, gender equality in the initial stages, right? It is based on the fourth convention that has happened in Beijing, where it was realized that gender analysis and gender mainstreaming will help in bringing a better balance, okay, and reduce the gender gap, right? It is focusing both on men and women. So gender mainstreaming is not a one sided strategy, it's a strategy for both men and women. And the critical factor is that gender mainstreaming requires explicit attention to gender perspective. Okay, it is important for that. Gender mainstreaming is not just about adding the component of in the program, it is about involving contribution, active contribution for from the women participants. Okay, so जब टैग कर दिया हमने एक women को किसी policy में, it is not gender mainstreaming, it is their active contribution. Okay, so that is the reason why it helps a lot, and that is the reason why it is actually you know a transformative process. Okay, so it is a policy which helps in transforming the entire system, the entire structure in the society, by transforming the equation between men and women. Okay, so that is the reason why it plays a very important role. Okay, now, what are the guidelines for implementation of gender mainstreaming? First is specific strategies. Okay, needs to be formulated, right? Very, very point pointed strategies needs to be formulated. Long and medium term plan and budget needs to be done. The initial definitions of issues and problem across all area of activity should be taken care of. Analytical reports and recommendations need to be studied properly. All right, then systematic use of gender analysis, right? Then sex disaggregated aggregation of data, right? Undertaking sector specific gender studies, that is also very important, right? And it also requires an equitable participation of women at all levels of decision making, right? And at an institutional level, that is a higher level, the clear political will and allocation of resources, right? If the political will is not there, gender mainstreaming will not work at all, right? Because you need to have authoritative government, a government to to take that initiative. All right, responsibility for implementing the mainstreaming strategy, okay, in different organizations, at all level, at the highest level, has to be done. And finally, training should be provided to all personals. Okay, Gender mainstreaming, once the policy is made, it has to be properly implemented also. So you have to take up a methodology, you have to work on it, institutional development needs to be done so that it is implemented. United Nation is already implementing the gender mainstreaming. Okay, it is almost 50-50% now, the situation is. And if you I don't know how many of you watch, sometimes when you watch the General Assembly of UN, okay, there is an address that is taking place, or when there is a there is some meeting of ILO, or when there is some meeting any of these international organization, you will realize that there is a lot of women speakers. Okay, right. That actually, the reason is that they are creating an environment at an international level for having an equality between the men and women. Okay, so that has to be there, right? There are certain weaknesses, no doubt. See, no no strategy can be foolproof, right? There will be certain issues, there will be certain problems, right? But depending, I mean, because gender mainstreaming especially is, it requires a lot of change. Okay, as I said, it is a transformative process, right? Because it is a transformative process, it might create certain issues, but then, one needs to handle it, and it's a long way. It's a long term policy, right? You cannot have it and at a in a day or two. Transformation does not happen like that, right? A lot of changes are taking place. As I said, United Nations have done in India also. You will find more and more women being included, right? We have a lot of departments, working for the women and child. Like initially it was a department, now it's a full-fledged ministry, isn't it? The Ministry of Women and Child Welfare. So all these steps are being taken, okay, by the government. So because there is a political will, and yes, it is happening, and one needs to just go through it, right? The changes. So then we come to gender mainstreaming policy research program. Again, uh, there's a lot of talk about the concept of gender mainstreaming, which we have already done. थोड़ा सा इसमें और उसको widely किया गया है, importance बताया गया है of gender mainstreaming, right? Obviously, because we must understand that the experiences of men and women are different, right? Therefore, the needs of men and women are different, right? The priorities of men and women are different, right? We have to recognize that uh, these differences are there. We cannot turn a blind eye to them, right? Because of these differences, it is important that men and women both come together, okay, for the planning process, for the policy making process, for the implementation process, isn't it? Right? If you just take one, then that means you are having a lopsided development planning. Okay, the lopsided means a development planning which is favoring one side and the other side is completely neglected. So we cannot have that kind of a planning process. So if you want to have a proper planning process, it is important that women should also be a part of it. Women's contribution in the public sphere is also very, very important. Okay, so as I told you that in India also there is a change in the scenario, right? What was there 30 years back is not there today. More and more civil societies, civil organizations are coming up. The self-help group is bringing a lot of changes, right? So there are talks about domestic violence. There was initially a time when people never used to talk about domestic violence. Today it is not that. A lot of people are coming up they are talking about it. Okay. And there is a national machinery working, okay, for the women's development. Okay. So these are the ways through which uh, the planning is changing. All right. And people are doing mm, uh, the overall scenario has undergone a change. Okay. So this is what you have in when it comes to the gender mainstreaming and gender uh, you know and planning. Okay. And the policy making, right? So these are the third and the fourth book. Okay. One is about GAD, that is the gender and development. Okay. How the implications and everything. The other one is about the gender mainstreaming, just what we have done. These are two very important points, right? Go through it properly, go through the strategic needs, the practical needs. Okay. I don't know, I haven't seen your uh, your assignments, but I don't know, maybe you will have questions on the gender needs and all, uh, because they are important aspects of the MGSC 001. Okay. So go through them. And as I said, if there is any issues that you want to discuss, you can discuss. And I think we'll be meeting on Monday, and on Monday we will be doing the fifth unit book of this topic. Okay. Right. So anything that you would like to know, uh, as I said, is a little bit of things clear to you in the two, this thing, basic understanding is okay na, you would great. So
Yes, ma'am. Very
that
much.
is how. Yeah. Okay. So no issues, so we can do it and go through it. And yes, we will discuss whatever you want to discuss. You are there on the I'm also there in your WhatsApp group. If you want to put a question there, feel free to do it. Whatever we are, either we can discuss there or I can discuss here also, so that others can also understand. Okay. All right. Fine. So this is where we come to the end of kind of today's class. Anything you would like to discuss, Gauri?
No, no, ma'am, not as of now.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
So just do it, right? So
Sure.
okay, Khushi, anything that you want to talk about, Khushi, Shrija,
Uh, no,
anybody?
ma'am, no.
Okay. No.
Thank
All
you.
right. Okay. Okay, fine. So have a good weekend, all of you. And
You too, ma'am.
sure, thank you. And I'll see you on Monday, same time. Okay, right? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Right.